She stood there frozen, her breath caught in her throat. 9 inches, a number, a measurement, yet it was enough to shake her. But why? Was it truly the size, or was it her mind's reaction to it? Today I will speak not just of shock, but of control. It is not the event itself that disturbs us, but our judgment of it. Shock is not an external force, it is an internal reaction. The world moves as it always has, without hesitation, without concern for our preferences. Yet when something unexpected happens, when reality does not align with our assumptions, we feel shaken. Why? Because we have given power to our expectations instead of grounding ourselves in what is. Imagine standing in a storm, unprepared, caught without shelter. The wind howls, the rain pours, and you are left exposed. The storm is not personal. It is neither cruel nor kind. It simply is. The discomfort you feel is not from the storm itself, but from your lack of preparation. If you had anticipated it, if you had dressed accordingly, you would not suffer in the same way. It is the same with life's shocks. The wise do not allow themselves to be caught unprepared. They expect change, they expect difficulty, they expect the unexpected, and because they expect it, they do not fear it. Perception is the root of all shock. Consider a traveler who steps onto unfamiliar ground. If she expects a smooth path and instead finds a steep, jagged climb, she may hesitate, complain, or even turn back. But if she had begun her journey with the understanding that the road would be rough, she would not be surprised. The difficulty remains the same, but her reaction changes because her expectations were aligned with reality. Now, imagine the same traveler walking into a dark room. If she believes there is nothing to fear, she will walk with confidence. But if she lets her mind fill with shadows, with imagined dangers lurking in every corner, she will hesitate at every step. This is how perception shapes our emotions. When we expect ease and comfort, any difficulty feels unbearable. When we expect permanence, any change feels like a loss. When we expect control over the uncontrollable, we feel powerless. It is never the thing itself that disturbs us, it is our relationship to it. A Stoic understands that the world is indifferent to our desires. The sun will rise and fall, the seasons will change, people will come and go, and events will unfold in ways we may never predict. To be shocked by any of it is to be caught in illusion, to believe that the world should shape itself according to our wishes. But the wise do not expect the world to conform to them. They conform to the world. They accept things as they are, not as they hoped they would be. Take, for example, a man who loses his wealth overnight. If he built his sense of worth upon gold and possessions, he will be devastated, as if his very self had been stolen from him. But if he had trained himself to understand that wealth is fleeting, that it was never truly his to begin with, then he will remain unshaken. The event remains the same, but his perception alters his suffering. He understands that the loss was not of himself, but only of something external, something never within his true control. So too with every other form of shock, betrayal, disappointment, hardship. These things do not arrive to hurt us, they arrive because they are part of life. A betrayal feels like an attack, but in reality it is simply human nature playing out as it always has. A setback feels unfair, but fairness exists only in our minds. The more we accept the flow of life without resistance, the less we will be shaken by its currents. This does not mean we must be passive. To understand that perception is the source of shock is to gain power over it. When we realize that we are the ones who give meaning to events, we can begin to take control of our emotions. We can train our minds to expect challenges, to anticipate hardship, to view surprises not as threats, but as opportunities for resilience. When something unexpected happens, we must pause and ask ourselves, is this truly terrible, or is it simply not what I expected? More often than not, it is our expectations that betray us, not life itself. In the end, the difference between those who crumble and those who stand firm is not the events they face, but the way they see them. The wise do not allow themselves to be blindsided because they expect nothing and are prepared for everything. They understand that perception is the master of emotion. And when the world presents them with a challenge, they do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead they say, "I knew this day would come, and I am ready." A wise person does not react but responds. This is the essence of mastery over emotion. To react is to surrender control, to let external events dictate our inner state, to allow emotions to rise and fall like waves without restraint. But to respond is to remain steady, to observe without being swept away, to decide how to act rather than be ruled by impulse. Consider a man who receives an insult. His instinct may be to lash out, to retaliate with anger, to meet harshness with harshness. But what does this accomplish? The insult does not wound him unless he allows it to. The words are merely air, sounds carried on the wind, and yet, if he lets them take root in his mind, they grow into pain, resentment, or fury. If he were to pause instead, if he were to examine the insult, recognize its emptiness and let it pass, he would remain untouched, his peace unbroken. This is the power of response over reaction. Emotions in themselves are not the enemy. It is natural to feel anger when wronged, sadness when suffering, or frustration when obstructed. But the wise understand that emotions are like fire, useful when controlled, destructive when left unchecked. Fire can warm a home, light the darkness, or forge steel. But if allowed to spread wildly, it consumes everything in its path. A person who reacts without restraint is like a fire without boundaries, dangerous, chaotic, and ultimately self-destructive. Mastery over emotion is not suppression. It is not the denial of feelings, nor is it a cold indifference to the world. It is simply the ability to govern oneself, to recognize emotions without being enslaved by them. A river may be deep and turbulent beneath the surface, but if its course is steady, if its direction is unwavering, then it remains strong, moving forward without being lost to the chaos beneath. Consider a warrior in battle. If he allows fear to consume him, he is already defeated before the fight begins. If he allows rage to cloud his judgment, he swings wildly, losing his precision. If he panics, his movements become erratic and his strength is wasted. But if he steadies himself, if he acknowledges his fear but does not let it control him, if he harnesses his anger but does not let it blind him, then he fights with clarity, with precision, and with power. He is not without emotion, but he is their master, not their servant. Now, take this principle beyond the battlefield. In daily life, challenges arise, betrayals, failures, unexpected hardships. Those who react impulsively become prisoners of their emotions. They are thrown from highs to lows at the mercy of their circumstances. A small inconvenience ruins their day, a minor slight fuels their resentment, a single failure makes them believe they are worthless. But the wise do not allow such things to rule them. They observe their feelings, they acknowledge them, but they do not become them. Imagine a ship sailing through a storm. The winds howl, the waves crash, and the sea is relentless. A weak captain panics, losing control of his vessel, letting the storm dictate his course. But a strong captain remains composed. He cannot control the storm, but he can control his ship. He does not waste energy cursing the wind, he adjusts his sails. He does not despair at the waves, he steers through them. This is the essence of emotional mastery, not the elimination of difficulty, but the ability to remain steady despite it. So how does one cultivate this strength? First, by recognizing that emotions are fleeting. What angers you today will be forgotten in a week. What breaks you now will one day be a memory. Why, then, should we let temporary feelings determine permanent actions? Second, by training the mind to pause before acting. The moment between stimulus and response is where true power lies. If someone insults you, before reacting, ask yourself, does this truly harm me? If you fail, ask yourself, is this the end or an opportunity to learn? The moment you take control of your response, you reclaim your freedom. Lastly, practice detachment. Understand that most things that disturb us do not truly belong to us. The opinions of others, the shifting nature of fortune, the unpredictable turns of life, none of these are within our control. To let them dictate our emotions is to give away our power. But when we detach from them, when we refuse to let them command our state of mind, we become unshakable. The world will test you. It will throw obstacles in your path. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will change. If you allow these things to control your emotions, you will forever be at their mercy. But if you master your response, if you remain steady, measured, and unmoved by the trivialities of the moment, you will find that nothing can truly disturb your peace. You will become like the mountain against the wind, the deep ocean beneath the storm, the flame that burns without consuming itself. You will not react, you will respond. Strength is not found in the external, nor is it measured by the weight one can lift, the wealth one can gather, or the power one can exert over others. True strength is not in the hands but in the mind, not in the body but in the spirit. The world teaches us to admire outward displays of dominance, physical prowess, material success, authority over others. But these things are fleeting. A body once strong will weaken. Wealth once abundant may vanish overnight, and power held too tightly will slip through one's fingers like sand. What remains then when all else is stripped away? Only what is within, the discipline of the mind, the resilience of the soul, the ability to stand firm in adversity. This is the measure of true strength. A person who relies on external advantages is like a house built on shifting ground. If their identity is tied to their status, they will crumble the moment it is taken away. If their confidence is rooted in possessions, they will be left empty when fortune changes. If their sense of self is tied to the validation of others, they will forever be at the mercy of opinions beyond their control. But the one who has built their strength within, who has forged themselves through discipline, who has trained their mind to endure, who has found stability in the unshakable core of their being, such a person cannot be moved. Consider two men facing the same hardship. One, accustomed to ease and comfort, is immediately undone by the first sign of struggle. He complains, he resents, he seeks escape rather than endurance. The other, hardened by discipline, welcomes the challenge. He does not waste time lamenting what is beyond his control. He focuses on what he can control, his own mind, his own actions. He does not crumble because he has trained himself not to need comfort. He does not break because he has made himself unbreakable. Strength is tested in adversity. It is easy to appear strong when nothing challenges you, just as it is easy to appear virtuous when no temptation arises. But when difficulty arrives, when hardship knocks at the door, that is when the truth of a person is revealed. Some retreat into self-pity, some lash out in frustration, some beg for the world to change in their favor. The strong, however, do not waste energy on such things. They do not ask for ease, they prepare for difficulty. They do not fear hardship, they welcome it as a proving ground. Imagine a tree standing in the wind. A weak tree with shallow roots will be uprooted when the storm arrives. But a strong tree deeply rooted in the earth does not fear the wind. It bends, it sways, but it does not fall. The same is true of a strong mind. It does not resist reality, it adapts to it. It does not fight against the inevitable, it prepares for it. And so, when the storms of life come, the strong do not complain, they do not despair, they endure. This endurance is not passive. It is not mere suffering, not the blind acceptance of pain. It is an active strength, a deliberate choice to stand firm, to refuse to be defeated. When one loses something dear, the weak lament endlessly, hoping for things to be as they were. The strong, however, do not waste time grieving over what cannot be changed. They accept, adapt, and move forward. They understand that the past is untouchable, the future uncertain, and that all they truly control is how they respond in this moment. There are those who believe that strength is found in aggression, in the ability to dominate or overpower, but this is a fragile strength, dependent on external factors, on having more, on being feared, on exerting force. The truly strong do not seek control over others, They seek control over themselves. They do not rely on intimidation, they rely on discipline. They do not crumble when things do not go their way because they never expected the world to shape itself to their desires in the first place. Discipline is the foundation of strength. Without it, one is a slave to impulse, to emotion, to comfort. A person who indulges every desire, who seeks ease over effort, who avoids hardship whenever possible, this person has no true strength, no resilience. They are ruled by their own weaknesses. The disciplined person, however, does not fear discomfort, does not seek escape from difficulty, does not give in to every passing emotion. They have trained themselves to endure, to remain steady, to act with purpose rather than impulse. Strength is also found in restraint. To act in anger is easy. To remain calm in provocation is true power. To seek revenge is instinctive. To forgive and move forward requires real fortitude. To react to every insult, every slight, every challenge with force is a sign of weakness, of a mind ruled by impulse. But to remain composed, to choose one's battles wisely, to respond rather than react, this is the mark of an unshakable person. And so the question arises, what do you measure your strength by? By how much you can take from the world, or by how much you can withstand? By the power you hold over others, or by the mastery you have over yourself? The wise do not seek strength in fleeting things. They build it where it cannot be taken from them, within. They train their minds to be steadfast, their hearts to be unyielding, their will to be unbreakable. True strength is not about never falling. It is about always rising again. It is about meeting life with steady hands and an unshaken heart. It is about standing firm, not because the world is kind, but because you have made yourself strong enough to bear it. Shock and discomfort often arise from unfamiliarity. The mind recoils at what it does not expect, what it has not prepared for. When we are unaccustomed to hardship, even the slightest difficulty feels unbearable. When we have lived in comfort, even small discomforts seem like great suffering. But those who have trained themselves to face discomfort, who have deliberately exposed themselves to challenge, find that they are rarely shaken. They do not flinch when confronted with the unexpected because they have already met it in their minds. They have strengthened themselves against it. It is not suffering itself that breaks a person. It is the belief that suffering should not exist. Those who expect life to be smooth, who assume that they will never be tested, are the ones who collapse under pressure. They are like a soldier who enters battle believing the enemy will be weak. His first encounter with resistance fills him with doubt, with fear, with uncertainty. But the soldier who is trained, who is prepared for the worst, does not panic when the fight begins. He expects hardship, and because he expects it, he does not falter when it arrives. In the same way, those who fear discomfort have not trained themselves to endure it. When they are cold, they suffer greatly. When they are hungry, they believe they are near death. When they are inconvenienced, they act as if they have been wronged. But those who have deliberately exposed themselves to hardship, who have embraced discomfort, even sought it out, understand that these things do not harm them. They know that the body can withstand hunger, that the mind can endure loneliness, that the soul is not destroyed by suffering, but refined by it. A person who has never walked barefoot will find even the smallest stone unbearable, but one who has hardened their feet, who has walked difficult paths, does not hesitate to tread where others fear to step. The same is true of the mind. If it is always protected, always given ease, it becomes fragile. But if it is tested, if it is trained, it grows resilient. It learns that pain is temporary, that difficulty is a teacher, that the things we fear are rarely as terrible as they seem. Many believe that the best life is one without suffering. They seek comfort at all costs, avoiding pain, avoiding challenge, avoiding anything that makes them uneasy. But what they do not see is that in their attempt to escape discomfort, they have made themselves weak. A life without hardship does not make one strong. It makes one fragile, like a blade that is never sharpened, like a body that is never exercised. A mind that is never tested becomes dull, unprepared for the moment when it is truly needed. Training oneself for discomfort is not an act of self-punishment, it is an act of preparation. The wise do not seek suffering for its own sake, but they do not flee from it either. They fast, not because they must, but because they wish to prove to themselves that hunger is not the end of them. They endure the cold, not because they enjoy it, but because they know that discomfort is temporary. They push their bodies and minds beyond what is necessary, so that when life truly demands endurance, they do not break. Consider the athlete who trains in harsh conditions, who runs in the rain, who lifts more than what is required. When the time comes for competition, he does not suffer as others do. He has already faced worse, already endured more. And so it is with the mind. Those who have embraced difficulty, who have chosen to meet discomfort rather than avoid it, do not fear when hardships arise. They are ready. This readiness is not just for great trials, but for daily life. The person who has trained for discomfort does not panic when things go wrong. They do not despair when plans change, when adversity arises, when they are forced into situations they did not anticipate. They simply adapt. They do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "How do I move forward?" Because they have already made peace with the fact that life is unpredictable, they do not resist it. Fear of discomfort is what makes people hesitate. It keeps them from taking risks, from speaking truth, from pushing beyond what is easy. But those who have trained themselves to endure discomfort do not hesitate. They know that fear is often worse than the thing itself, that once one steps forward, the challenge becomes manageable. There is no escape from difficulty in life. There is no world where suffering does not exist. The only question is whether we will meet it as fragile beings, unprepared, overwhelmed, or whether we will meet it as those who have trained, who have strengthened themselves against it, who have learned that discomfort is not the enemy, it is the forge that makes us stronger. Fear is a chain that binds the mind, a weight that drags a person down before they have even begun to act. It is not the thing itself that is terrifying, it is the mind's anticipation of it. The unknown, the unexpected, the uncertain. These are what fill people with hesitation, with doubt, with the urge to retreat rather than advance. But fear is not real in the way we assume it is. It is not an enemy standing before us, sword in hand. It is a shadow, a whisper, an illusion. The only way to overcome it is to confront it, to strip it of its power, to step forward despite its presence. Many allow fear to govern their lives. They wait, hesitate, tell themselves they are not ready, that they must have certainty before they act. But what is certainty except an illusion? Nothing in life is guaranteed, nothing is fixed. And yet, despite this, the world moves forward. The seasons change, the sun rises and sets, rivers carve through stone, not because they know exactly what lies ahead, but because movement is the only way forward. A person who waits for all fear to disappear before they take action will wait forever. Fear thrives in inaction. The longer one hesitates, the greater the fear becomes. It grows, takes root, spreads. A simple task, when feared, becomes monstrous in the mind. A challenge, when avoided, becomes impossible. But the moment one takes a step, the moment one acts despite the fear, its power diminishes. The task that seemed overwhelming becomes manageable. The challenge that seemed insurmountable reveals itself to be nothing more than a series of small steps. Consider a man standing before cold water, afraid to step in. He imagines the chill, the discomfort, the shock to his system. The more he thinks, the worse it becomes. But the moment he steps forward, the moment his body meets the water, reality takes over. Yes, it is cold, but it is not unbearable. Yes, it is uncomfortable, but it does not destroy him. And after a moment, the water no longer seems hostile. It becomes something he can handle, something familiar. His fear was never about the water itself, but about what he imagined it would be. So it is with all things in life. Fear is not in the event, but in the mind's anticipation of it. The challenge itself is rarely as terrible as the way we picture it. And yet many live their entire lives in avoidance, in hesitation, in fear of things that have not yet happened, that may never happen. They build walls in their minds, prisons made of their own doubts. They tell themselves stories about failure, about pain, about what might go wrong, until these stories become more real to them than the world itself. But the wise do not allow fear to dictate their actions. They recognize it, but they do not bow to it. They understand that fear is natural, that it will always be present, but that it does not have to be a master. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it. A person who feels no fear is not necessarily strong. They may simply be blind to risk. But a person who feels fear acknowledges it and moves forward anyway. That is true strength. Fear is also the result of attachment. People fear loss because they cling too tightly to things they cannot control. Wealth, status, comfort, the opinions of others. They fear the future because they believe they must dictate its course. But the wise understand that nothing is truly within our grasp. Wealth can be lost, status can change, comfort can vanish in an instant. The only thing truly within our power is how we respond. To fear loss is to resist the nature of life itself, but to accept that all things are transient, to move forward without clinging to what cannot be held. This is freedom. One must train the mind to step forward, despite uncertainty. The path ahead will never be fully known. There will always be risk, always be the possibility of failure, but hesitation is a slow death. Every moment spent in fear is a moment wasted, a moment lost to the illusion of control. When one realizes this, fear begins to lose its hold. It no longer appears as an enemy, but as a challenge, one that can be met, one that can be overcome. There is an old saying, "The obstacle is the way." Fear is not something to run from, it is something to step into. Each time one faces it, one grows stronger. Each time one chooses action over hesitation, fear loses power. In the end, the greatest regret is not failure, it is never having tried at all. Fear whispers lies, tells us to wait, to stay safe, to avoid the unknown. But the wise hear this whisper and smile. They know the truth. The only way to silence fear is to act. Control is an illusion, and those who cling to it suffer the most. Life moves with or without our consent. It does not ask what we want, nor does it shape itself to our desires. The sun rises whether we wish it to or not. The seasons change without our approval. Time moves forward, indifferent to our resistance. Yet, many spend their lives attempting to control what is beyond their reach. Other people, external circumstances, the unpredictable flow of events. They fight against reality, and in doing so they exhaust themselves in a battle that cannot be won. The wise understand this. They do not waste their energy trying to force the world into submission. They do not demand that things be as they wish, nor do they rage when life does not comply with their desires. Instead, they focus only on what is within their command. Their own thoughts, their own actions, their own ability to respond with wisdom and strength. This is where true power lies, not in shaping the world, but in shaping oneself. There is no benefit in worrying about what cannot be changed. If the rain falls, does it stop because you protest? If a misfortune befalls you, does anger undo it? If another speaks ill of you, does it harm you unless you allow it? Most suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our resistance to them. The world simply is. It does not intend to harm or favor us. To take things personally, to see obstacles as injustices, to expect life to unfold according to our plans, this is to invite suffering. Imagine a river flowing swiftly. The one who resists it, who tries to push against the current, will only tire and sink. But the one who moves with the current, who understands that they cannot change the flow but can adapt to it, will find ease where others find struggle. Life is this river. It does not bend to our will, but we can learn to navigate it, to move in harmony with what is, rather than wasting energy on what we wish would be. Control over others is an even greater illusion. No amount of force, persuasion, or pleading can truly dictate the actions of another person. You may influence them, you may inspire them, but you cannot control them. And yet, many tie their peace of mind to the behaviors of others, hoping they will act a certain way, expecting them to fulfill specific roles, demanding that they meet expectations. When others fail to do so, frustration arises. But the wise understand that people are as they are, not as we wish them to be. They accept this, and in doing so free themselves from unnecessary disappointment. To relinquish control does not mean to be passive. It does not mean to surrender to life as a victim. It means to act where action is possible and to accept where action is futile. A farmer cannot dictate the weather, but he can plant his crops wisely. A sailor cannot control the wind, but he can adjust his sails. A person cannot force others to respect them, but they can live in a way that commands respect. This is the difference between foolishness and wisdom, between struggling against the inevitable and working with it. Consider a man who loses his wealth. One man, tied to the illusion of control, sees this as a catastrophe. He despairs, curses his fate, blames the world. Another man, understanding that fortune is fleeting, does not waste time in lamentation. He adapts. He does what can be done and does not dwell on what cannot. He is not broken by loss because he never believed he owned anything permanently to begin with. Control over the past is another common illusion. Many torment themselves over things that have already happened, wishing they had chosen differently, regretting words spoken or actions taken. But the past is untouchable. No amount of regret can change it. No amount of guilt can rewrite what has been done. The wise do not dwell on what cannot be undone. They learn, they adjust, and they move forward. To resist the past is as foolish as resisting the tide. It is energy wasted, a battle lost before it begins. Even control over one's own future is limited. We may plan, prepare, take every precaution, and yet life will still unfold in ways we did not expect. The one who believes they have total command over their fate will be endlessly frustrated when reality does not align with their plans. But the one who understands that flexibility is greater than rigid control will always find a way forward. They do not break when obstacles arise. They adjust, they adapt, they endure. This is not to say that one should surrender completely. There is a space where control is real, within the self. Your thoughts, your reactions, your ability to accept or resist. This is where your power lies. If someone insults you, you cannot control their words, but you can control your response. If misfortune befalls you, you cannot undo it, but you can decide whether you will meet it with despair or with strength. If life takes a turn you did not expect, you cannot rewrite the events, but you can shape the way you move forward. A life spent grasping at control is a life spent in tension, in frustration, in endless struggle against forces that do not bend to our will. But a life spent mastering one's own mind, one's own emotions, one's own responses. This is a life of true power. The only real control we have is over ourselves, and the moment we accept this, we are free.